and welcome to this new episode of the Bond Room Unlocked, whereby two fans of opposing opinions go head to head on the 1987 and Timothy Dalton's first outing as Bond, The Living Daylights. And of course, I'll be throwing in a piece of memorabilia from that film from my 27-year-old Bond collection. But first, round one.
So why do I like The Living Daylights? Well, I would honestly say, what is there not to like about The Living Daylights? It is in my opinion, the best James Bond film. It is the introduction of Timothy Dalton, who I think was and is the best actor we will have portraying James Bond. It has an amazing score, which was actually the last one done by John Barry, along with an amazing soundtrack from a-ha. And it even has incidental music that will take you away from everything that is causing you a problem in the world, for some of the scenes involving action with the assassin Necros, with the music Where's Everybody Gone? But what I would say of this film is that you've delivered, with Dalton's performance, a believable assassin, a believable secret agent. And there are scenes of acting in it, particularly when Bond has to pursue an assassin who's killed his colleague. There is nothing that is comparable to it. It is simply exceptional.
I don't really consider The Living Daylights a favourite because I think that it lacks a lot of the elements that make a Bond film really great. Not just good, but great. So I think one of those is a really strong villain. I never really feel the threat from Brad Whitaker, and Koskov is more of a comic book character who goes between seemingly intimidating and then seemingly quite pathetic. So Brad Whitaker never really feels like either a physical or intellectual match for Bond in any way. The threat from him doesn't come through as strong as it does from a lot of the other villains, and especially when you hold it up in comparison to License to Kill and the way that Sanchez really holds Bond on a string for most of that film.
Okay, so I'm with John on this first round of arguments. I do not find Brad Whitaker or Koskov menacing or threatening enough to trouble our man Bond. And that's the reason, or one of the reasons, why I consider this film to be mid-table at best. I certainly prefer Joe Don Baker in his role of Jack Wade as seen in GoldenEye and in 1997 Tomorrow Never Dies. His portrayal of Brad Whitaker is clownish. The character is vain and pompous, and he has this macabre collection of infamous historical figures that are portrayed in his likeness. And that's a good idea, but I just don't think the actor, Joe Don Baker, came across menacing enough to pull this off. And as for Georgy Koskov, he's a smarmy character, deceitful, and I actually think he's played fairly well by Jerome Crabb. But he doesn't really light my fire. I like the fact that he's got like decorative medals on his uniform, and it does make you wonder, actually, did he actually obtain these heroically, or did he obtain them in another way?
So the other question I was asked for the Bond Room Unlocked is Timothy Dalton a good Bond in The Living Daylights? I would answer that with, when is Timothy Dalton not a good Bond? I think he is the grittiest, most realistic, most damaged James Bond we got until Daniel Craig's interpretation. But for me, Timothy Dalton is still hands and feet and whatever body part you want to go with above everybody else who's portrayed the role. I would argue that Timothy Dalton is possibly too good for the role. He's a trained Shakespearean actor, so he's obviously and almost too good for the part. I think he's great in it. He gives you a believable character when he chases down the assassin who has killed Saunders in an quote unquote accident involving a pair of electronic doors that decapitate him. The anger, the rage that you see in Dalton is just phenomenal. And then you also see a realistic love with Cara Malova, with the way he interacts with her. So I will forever and a day give Mr. Dalton 10 out of 10 in his portrayal of James Bond.
A lot of people have said that Dalton is Fleming's Bond, and I agree with that. I think he is. But is Fleming's Bond our Bond? At this point in the series, when we've had an amazing series of films from Sean Connery, some laugh out loud moments with Roger Moore that have taken us through some crazy adventures, even into space. Does it feel right at this point that we go back to the source material? I don't think so. I think that Bond has developed off the page into something entirely different. And one of the things that we all love about Bond is the humour, is his over-the-top way of dealing with every problem that's thrown his way. And I don't feel that Dalton has that. But he tries to grasp it. And when he does, it feels awkward and really takes you out of the story.
Okay, thanks guys. Well, I actually prefer Dalton to Daniel Craig in some respects, although both are lower ranked in Bonds. Personally, for me, I'm a Connery, Brosnan type of girl. Connery had the magnetism and charisma on screen that very few have managed to convey since. And Brosnan is the Bond of the 90s, my Bond, and the reason why I'm doing all this. So the piece of memorabilia I want to share with you from The Living Daylights is this 7-inch record that was released in 1987 by Aha, The Living Daylights, and there we have the band there. And what I like about the front cover of this, it has the Dr. No dots, which I think is a nice touch. Now this has been in my family since release from 1987. It did belong to my sister, but I actually obtained it off her. And on the other side here we have a little bit of movie clips from the film. We've got Dalton as Bond, and with Cara Malova there, which is played by Mariam Diabo, and we've got some of the sequences in the film. And it's just nice to have an original record, you know, in the collection.
So how would I rank The Living Daylights? To choose, or to borrow from a famous football manager, I won't say it's the best James Bond film, but it's definitely the top one. No, for me it is the greatest James Bond film. It has the greatest cast. I've been lucky enough to meet some of the people who've been involved in the making of it, and they have nothing but warm stories to tell me of it. But for me, it is the best Bond film. It takes me out of any sort of troubles and concerns I've got in a day. It always gives me a sense of happiness and pleasure and satisfaction watching it, and I cannot fault it. I listen to the soundtrack regularly. Number one, all day, every day, all the time.
So where would I rank The Living Daylights? Well, I'd certainly rank it lower than Licence to Kill. I think it took until that second film for Dalton to nail some of the elements that we all know and love about our James Bond. For me, The Living Daylights is one of the lower ranked films. I'd possibly put it bottom 5 or 6. It certainly has elements that I really enjoy, but as part of the whole Bond catalogue, it's one of my least revisited, and it's not one that I would just choose to put on when scanning through my DVD cabinet. If it's on TV, I'll always watch it, but I think that goes for any Bond film. Well, maybe apart from the 67 Casino Royale. So, as with every Bond film, it's a good film. I don't think there's any such thing as a bad Bond film. But is it great? No, I don't think so. And for me, it's one of the lower ranked.
Where do you rank The Living Daylights? Do you agree with James that it's a top-notch film and it should be at that very top of the list? Or are you with Jon that it's a mid-table Bond film, it's okay, but there are others that you prefer to watch? It'd be great to know your thoughts. Please leave them in the comments below. So, if you have enjoyed this Living Daylights debate, then click on the notifications below, give it an MI6 stamp of approval, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any further missions. We have some great things coming up in the future. You can also find the Bond Room Unlocked on Instagram and on Facebook with more Bond content, quizzes, games, polls, all sorts of things. Come and join us. It's growing every day. We have over 1,000 members now. And you can also find me co-hosting with Tom Pizzato and Dan Silvestri on SpyMovieNavigator.com, cracking the code of Spy Movies podcasts, where we look at all things spy, and it's great to be involved in. So, I'd like to thank James and Jon for their valued opinion on the Living Daylights, and I'd like to thank you for watching. See you next time.